Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Barely Filtered with Aurora. We are here today. Oh man, it has been just, I feel like the last time I was here, I was recording with my sister Sophie, and so much has happened. I feel like, okay, I had a bit of a relapse over the last 2 weeks, and I really wasn't going to tell you guys this, but I'm feeling very transparent, and I feel like it's just, I can't lie to you guys anymore because, well, I can't lie to you ever, but I was feeling really hard on myself about it. I've talked to you guys many times before that when I was younger and I had ADHD, well, I still do, but it's just unmedicated now. I was on Adderall for like forever. So like 2 years ago, I was like, oh my God, I can't do this. It's horrible. It's messing up my gut and my skin and my brain and everything. So I, for whatever reason, I was going through my closet and I found an old purse, and inside one of the pockets was an Adderall from must have been years ago. And I was like feeling so tired, and I was like, I just want to take this. And I made the most rash decision to just like swallow the thing. And then I'm like, it was what was it? Like a 20 milligram non-time release. The feelings that come back that your body remembers from what essentially is like meth is wild. And I've been feeling so bad about it because it was something that I really never wanted to do again ever. And just the fact that I like was just all of a sudden was like just taking a random pill from a random purse that was in my closet. There's more to this. So I think they say that like, and I call it a relapse because to me, my relationship with Adderall was like a real serious like drug addiction. Even though I took it as prescribed, it was just something that I was so reliant on in order to function. And then I needed I mean, while I took it as prescribed, it just was, I feel like it was not anything that I should have ever been prescribed in my whole life anyway. So that happened over the weekend. Was feeling really just bad about that. And, you know, so I'm in my recovery mode because also, by the way, if I take Adderall for one day, like I didn't sleep that night, and then it messes up your sleep. It really messed up my sleep for like 3 days, which sets me on a whole tailspin of like, and this is from taking one Adderall will make me not sleep. I think it's because I haven't taken it in so many years too that I'm like more sensitive to it. But my sleep wasn't the same for like 3 full days. And so I guess when did that happen? That happened last week. That happened last Tuesday. So today is a week from the day that oh yeah, I think it was when I went home from recording with Sophie. I was so tired. I was like going through my closet, found it, and it was like, and of course it's like 4:00 in the afternoon when I find it too. It's like, who in their right mind thinks that's a good idea? Because I also don't have my kids. I don't have my kids Monday, Tuesdays, and then I pick them up Wednesdays after school. So I was like, this will be fun. And I had a date that night. That's what it was too. I had a date, and I wanted a little extra energy. The guy I went on a date with is an artist from Mexico City. And there's one thing that I'll say about Adderall is that it can cut through lifetimes of bonding with somebody. It's like we became the best friends that night, like the very best friends. Of course, this is like probably me on like my manic mind. And now I think we actually are best friends, but I will not be dating him because unfortunately there just isn't, it wasn't enough of like a real like physical attraction, which is fine. My manager was just making fun of me because she's like, oh my God, you're going on another date tonight. You date so much. And I'm like, I guess my dates have been picking up again. Like I went on that one date last week. I have a date tonight, and then I have a date. Well, I'm going to be in New York in November for twice. So I have a date coming up at both those days. I don't know. I'm really trying to be intentional about dating. But anyway, see, my brain is like still recovering from this relapse of Adderall that I took. So I went on the date with the guy on Tuesday and didn't sleep that night. Not because of him, just didn't sleep. and and then that took me like 3 days to get my sleep patterns back, and I'm just so annoyed with myself that I haven't touched one of those things in 2 years, and that I did, and now I'm like getting back to my health, I guess. So that's what I'm doing right now. I have a date tonight with a guy who lives in Miami, which is ridiculous because I'm supposed to be being intentional about about like dating, and this guy lives 3,000 miles away. So I'm not sure what I think is going to happen there. But yeah, that's that. The artist from Mexico wants me to sit for him so he can draw. And I was like, of course, I made the joke about paint me like one of your French girls from the Titanic. And he says that he gets that exact joke all the time. I thought I was being creative, but evidently not. And I'm like, I don't know. Do you think it's possible to go on a date with somebody and then remain friends, even though you haven't, like, there wasn't any sexual, we didn't make out or hook up or anything, but I kind of feel like he still wants to hang out because he thinks he can convince me that maybe like we can get there. And if there's one thing that I've learned in my dating experience recently, it's that guys really like a chase. Like they are wired for it. And then once you give them the thing they're chasing, they're not interested in it. Like they're not as interested anymore. Supposedly this changes if you give it more time. For instance, like waiting to sleep with somebody. If you wait like 3 months, then at that point you've developed enough of a foundation where like even if they get the thing they've been chasing, there's more of a foundation where everything won't crumble. And that's the whole idea behind waiting to sleep with somebody. So that's what I'm going to do on my next dating extravaganza. And it won't be with this guy, but I do have another date tonight and we're just going to get coffee. Well, that's the other thing. It's like coffee at night. I'll just get a mocktail, but he lives in Miami. And do you think it's worth it for me to be going on dates with people who live in other cities? And that's just a question I'm going to put out into the ethers. Feel free to DM me with the answer. I feel like it's worth it just to get to know people. However, I think I'll probably need to ask him, like in the first date, would you ever move? Because I'm not moving. But then I think people also get freaked out when you start being like, do you want more kids? Would you ever move for me? And they're like, lady, I just met you. But at the same time, you do need to you do need to get to the bottom of some of these questions right away so that no one's wasting their time. I'm sorry for this very scattered intro. I swear to God, like there really is, I don't know how to explain it. And I think only people who have ADD and have been on something like Adderall before know that like when you kind of have to train your brain how to operate in the world without being medicated. And then when you get a taste of the medicine that works so well for you when you're on it, and then you kind of pull away, it's like there's this I feel like my brain is readjusting to not being on Adderall, even though I was only on it for that one, technically like 2 days, because it lasts it definitely stays in my system for more than 1 day. Okay, so that is my very scattered update, but stay tuned for next week because I have some very interesting stuff that came up I did something called brain mapping with this guy called Dr. Brian Coates. And basically it's like they track the electrical circuits of how your brain works. When I met with him to go over this brain map, it was one of the most shocking things that I have ever seen. And everything kind of makes sense. So stay tuned for that because I'm going to drop some bombs in the next intro about what I found on these scans. And without further ado, I will introduce our guest for today. She's an activist, founder of the Justice Defense Fund, and a leading voice in the fight against human trafficking and sexual exploitation. She is best known for her work in advocating for greater accountability from online platforms, particularly with her campaign to expose the practices of Pornhub and other similar websites that allow the hosting and distribution of non-consensual and abusive content. Mickelwait's efforts have led to global awareness and significant changes in policies on these platforms. She frequently speaks on topics such as online exploitation, the dangers of unregulated content, and the need for stronger legal protections for victims. I'm so excited to talk to her today, and I know you guys are going to get a lot from this interview. I have with me here Laila Mickelwait. Did I say that right?
You
okay,
did,
good.
yes.
So wow. I am just so blown away with what you do. I don't think there's any more important work in the world than trying to fight human trafficking of any kind. How did you get into that? I feel like it's something that I've always wanted to get involved in, but it's almost like too hard to look at.
Yeah.
For a lot of people. It's like they'd rather not almost.
Yeah, it is hard to look at. And I mean, the way that I got into it was, my dad from a very young age was really focused on human rights issues. And he grew up in the midst of civil war in Amman, Jordan, and came to the United States to become a doctor and ended up becoming a surgeon and really gave his life to saving lives, which he was a general and vascular surgeon, excuse me. But he really stayed connected to the plight of oppressed groups around the world as we were growing up. And so some of the most, bonding moments I had with my dad growing up were us talking about these like really deep, heavy subjects. And one day, when I was older, it was in 2005, like we would always watch documentaries together, the news. He called me into the living room and we watched a documentary on child sex trafficking in Calcutta, India. And at that time I had seen a lot, like I had been really looking into different human rights abuses, but this particular one arrested my attention like nothing else, because it was almost like there could be nothing worse than selling a child, raping a child for money over and over and over again. And I just was so shocked and horrified by it that I felt like, okay, I want to just dig deeper. I want to understand it more. And I just stayed on that path. And now it's been 18 years since I first got engaged in this fight. But that's that's how I started.
That is crazy. And it's also so crazy that you say India 2005, because I actually spent 6 weeks in India in 2005. And it was not in Calcutta, I was in southern India, but I just remember that's one of the things that gave me the most shock, just like culture shock, was to see on the streets, they would have a different child or different baby like begging with a different person every day. And I was like, whose mom is it? Like, which one is the mom? And it's like they don't really have parents.
Yeah, that's a form of trafficking that happens around the world as well, as children are being abused and used for, those kinds of purposes, exploited for begging. And it's awful. Sometimes you see that they get, like, if there's little babies that could be used that way, and they end up kind of drugging them to make them compliant and hold them. And so, it's happening. It's not only sex trafficking, labor trafficking is happening as well. And yeah, so many forms. But that's interesting. It was like around the same time.
It was around the same time? Yeah. And I just remember, oh my God, it was like the most horrible thing. Because at least, a lot of horrible things happened in the US as well, I'm sure. But in India, it just looked like it was just right out there on the streets for everybody to see. And in the US, it's a little more hidden.
Yeah. Yeah. And trafficking definitely is global, and it happens here, and it happens in forms that we don't always think of when we think about sex trafficking. Sometimes we think about kind of the most, black and white cases where you have like a child that's being held and abused and raped, and sometimes there's kidnapping involved and things like you see in the movies, like
or like Dateline, or
but often what's happening is it's happening in different forms. So in the US and places around the world, often families are actually selling their own children for profit, for sex, for rape. It's not sex, it's rape.
Yeah.
And that happens too. It's in, people that they know in foster care, kids are being exploited. And then it's happening online. So, abusive acts are being filmed and they're being uploaded, they're being monetized online. And that's one way that trafficking is also happening today on a massive scale, and on the surface web, on the world's most popular websites, porn sites. And that's where my work took a shift a bit over 10 years ago, when I started to realize that trafficking and exploitation wasn't just happening in the brothels and the back alleys, but it was actually happening. It was being filmed and uploaded and monetized and globally distributed online for profit. And yeah.
So when you say that things are being filmed and uploaded onto these porn sites, are you saying that the people who are in charge of these sites are well aware that this is trafficking or that this is abuse? Or are they thinking that this is somebody who's of age, who's who's given consent.
Yeah, I mean, the horrific thing that I discovered when I began to investigate what was going on Pornhub, which is the world's largest, was the world's largest, but most well-known porn site, was that initially what was happening is they had an initial policy where they did not require ID to verify age of who's in these user-generated videos, because this is the user-generated porn tube sites. This is free porn. It's anybody with an iPhone that can film a sex act and upload it online. And what I discovered in, late 2019, early 2020, it was February of 2020. I tested the upload system for myself after I had heard a story in the news a short time earlier, a few weeks earlier. It was about a 15-year-old girl from Florida who had been missing for an entire year, and she was finally found when her mother was tipped off by a Pornhub user that he had recognized her daughter on the site. And she was found in 58 videos being raped for profit. And they matched his face from the videos to a surveillance footage from a 7-Eleven and actually rescued the girl from his apartment. And I heard that story. I heard, the Sunday Times at the same time had done an investigation of Pornhub, and they had found dozens of videos that were illegal within minutes, even children as young as 3. And it wasn't just children. So at the same time, the headlines were showing an adult woman, for example, named Nicole Adamando from New York, and she was being sexually tortured, raped, and then her abuser, who was her partner, was filming that, uploading it to Pornhub. And she ended up killing him in self-defense, and she got sentenced to life in prison.
Oh my God.
Separated from her 2 young children. Her. Yeah, well, she's free now. So thankfully, she appealed that. The sentence was reduced to 7 years, and she's out today. But so those were the kind of things that I was hearing about in the news. And I said, how in the world is this happening? I tested the upload system, and I found out what millions of people already knew, because they were uploading all the time to the site, was they weren't requiring ID. They were not requiring consent form to verify this isn't a rape or trafficking victim. And that's how the site became infested with videos of real sexual crime. That's initially what happened. Yeah. And that was a policy that the CEO, that the owners of the company knew that there was victims all over the site, and they still wanted content. And so they would not require age or consent.
Oh my God. So did they require consent now?
So finally now, after so much has happened, they were forced to take down 91% of the whole site. So to give some context,
91% was illegal?
91% of the site was unverified and infested with videos of real sexual crime. So they lost Visa, MasterCard, Discover, PayPal, and they were forced to take down 91%. That they went from 56 million videos and images in 2020 to 5.2 million today. And they're facing 25 lawsuits on behalf of 300 victims, even, class actions on behalf of tens of thousands of child victims, and criminal investigation. They've been criminally charged by the U.S. government. Thousands of media articles have exposed them. But that, at the essence, that was the core of the problem. So today, finally, as of September, in new videos, they're starting to verify the age and consent of those who are in the videos, but they still have millions that were unverified, even on the site today.
And I wonder, how is this verification even legit? Because I just know from having a fake ID myself when I was 18, they could probably make fake IDs for these girls.
It's possible. Yeah. Look, there's ways that you can get around it, even if you're verifying an ID. So they have third parties, companies that exist to do verification, where they could do a biometric scan of the face. You show an ID, you send in a consent form, and it's not going to be 100% foolproof, but it's going to get rid of a significant portion of the illegal content. Right. Initially, they didn't do anything. Anonymously, someone with a VPN could upload. You had no idea who the uploader was. You had no idea who's in the videos. And often these are actual victims, not only of rape and child sexual abuse, but also we used to call it revenge porn, but we call it image-based sexual abuse, where it could be consensually recorded and uploaded non-consensually.
So is there a history of what computer this is coming from? Has there always been a history of what computer it's coming from? And just thinking about somebody who who really doesn't want to be tracked down, are we always going to be able to find them?
Well, if they're allowed to use a VPN, like Pornhub initially, they were allowing them to use a VPN, which masks your IP address.
Oh, okay. I didn't know what a VPN
and the
was.
IP address is where you can locate a device.
Right.
Which is necessary to find pedophiles. And so they were allowing uploaders to not only not show ID or anything like that, but allowing them to also use a VPN. They also had a mirror site on the dark web where they were allowing people to have additional anonymity when they were viewing child sexual abuse material and other crimes. So, I mean, like the layers of complicity go so deep. And like, so in the book, Takedown, you go on a journey of discovery where you really like peel back. It's like these onion layers of complicity when you find out from moderators, you find out from insiders of the company why this was so egregious, and the way that this was intentional policy decisions that enabled the abuse to stay on the site. Like they had, the number of moderators they had 10 working 8-hour shifts for not only Pornhub, but all of the PornTube sites owned by its parent company. Facebook has 15,000. So they had 10 per shift, working 8-hour shifts, 30 total. Facebook has 15,000. And they were just guessing. They were just guessing who's a child, who's 16, who's 18, what's rough sex, what's rape.
Oh,
literally
my
guessing.
God.
Yeah.
10 people per shift. Oh my God. Wait, what's the name of this book that you just mentioned again?
Yeah. So the book that I released in July, it's called Takedown.
Okay.
Inside the Fight to Shut Down Pornhub for Child Abuse, Rape, and Sex Trafficking.
Okay. And you go through the beginning
journey.
of that whole journey.
You meet the victims, you meet the lawyers who are taking on these cases, the insiders from the company. I mean, even the former owner of Pornhub reached out and said he wanted to help. And we unmasked the secret shareholder of the company. So the owner, the majority shareholder of Pornhub, hid his identity from the public for years and finally was unmasked and located.
Was he in on it all, or was he kind of?
Oh yeah. He knew. I mean, they knew everything. I mean, the lawyers.
Is he in jail?
Not yet, but he's being sued by all of these victims personally because he was located. But lawyers for the victims say, look, Pornhub knew what was on. The owners of Pornhub knew what was on the site, as well as NASA knows what's going on in the space capsule, because they're at the end of the day, they're search engine optimization. They want massive amounts of traffic, so they have to optimize all of the content. They analyze it. They know it so well. The tags, the titles, the searches, the users, the comments, all of it. And they were well aware of what was going on.
So why would he contact you to be part of your book when he knows like that you want nothing more than to see him, they see his demise?
Well, he was the former owner.
Okay.
So that's one thing. I find out that later on, the reason why he was wanting to help, and he actually revealed the secret shareholder of Pornhub. Not only that, but encouraged going after the credit card companies as the Achilles heel to hold the company accountable, because what he said was kind of confirming what we suspected already, was that the only thing they care about is money. And the way to go after the money is to get the credit card companies to stop processing all the advertisements for the site, the premium subscriptions, all of that. They were selling 4.6 billion ad impressions on Pornhub every day.
Wow.
And that was including on child sexual abuse material, rape, trafficking. But at the end of the day, I found out that actually he had ulterior motives, not surprising, and that he was aiming to buy back the company at a discount after it was, the value of the company would tank, and then he could go back in and buy it and scoop it up.
Wow.
And perhaps want to rehabilitate it.
And probably his reputation by being like, oh, look at how good of a guy I am now. So talk to us about the Justice Defense Fund.
Yeah. So I founded the Justice Defense Fund as it's a nonprofit organization. And in the midst of all of this, one thing that became really clear over the last, over a decade, was that the way to really address trafficking in a meaningful way, at least when it comes to corporate facilitated trafficking, like what we see on Pornhub and, its enablers like Visa, MasterCard, the search engines, is to go after the money, is to make the financial risk for continued exploitation greater than the benefit that these companies and their executives get by maintaining the status quo. Yeah. And so how can we do that? We can support victims in their pursuit of justice, enable them, help them to pursue civil litigation against these corporations and their enablers if they want to, and support them through that. And so it's such a hard thing to go to court to hold abusers accountable it can be a traumatic experience. And so we want to be advocates for them and like help them along on that process.
Right.
And then continue to shine a light on what's going on, because we believe that without public pressure, without a light, without people being aware of what's happening, like it's not enough to just pursue justice in court. You have to win the court of public opinion as well. And so being able to bring this to the public is really critical. So that's the work we do.
Wow, that's amazing. Are you helping these people with like to obtain lawyers and with all the financial burden? I'm sure that's
it's to help them access the historically unequal justice system, where you have, you know, a victim who just doesn't have the means, doesn't have the connections, doesn't have the support to be able to pursue in a meaningful way, go toe to toe with huge corporations that could, you know, afford literally anything, right, and have all the connections in the world. And so it's really helping them access that system. And hopefully they'll win. I mean, just one of these cases that's, you know, if it goes to trial, I mean, the facts are so horrific. I mean, just one of these cases could bankrupt Pornhub.
I'm sure, because this is, I mean, my God, I can't imagine. For somebody like me, and I think most of us, like most of the people who don't have to hear these horrible stories every day, it's unfathomable. Like any normal person sitting in the jury would never vote on the side of somebody who is facilitating any kind of child endangerment, let alone to do with like sexual exploitation.
100%. There's one case that I've been watching, and the victim just filed an amended complaint in August. And it's probably one of the worst cases that I think has come, it's been filed against the company. And it's on behalf of a 12-year-old boy from Alabama who was drugged, overpowered, and raped in 23 videos by a man named Rocky Shea Franklin, who's in jail for 40 years. And those videos were being sold, pay to download content. The profits were being split between Pornhub and Rocky. And police actually had reached out multiple times demanding that the videos come down, and they were ignored. And the videos stayed up for 7 months, getting hundreds of thousands of views. And
why? How were they able to stay up?
Well, we found out in legal discovery that they actually only had one person hired 5 days a week. So they had 1,800 employees at the company, and they had hired one person 5 days a week to review videos flagged for terms of service violations, including rape and trafficking. And, they had a backlog of 706,000 videos.
Oh my God.
And they had a policy where you had to flag a video 15 times before they would even put it in review, queue for review. So that was kind of a hint at like, you can expect that if they had that system set up, they don't have a system in place necessary to be able to address the illegal content on the site.
It's not their priority. And then if anybody asks, are you guys doing anything about it? They're like, yeah, we are.
We have a team. Like they would call their moderator team. Like when they were trying to defend themselves, they would say, we have a large and extensive team of human moderators that view every single video before it goes up on the site. And I'm like, really? So you watched a 12-year-old boy unconscious being raped in 23 videos and you thought that was okay? Or a 3-year-old that's confirmed to be on?
I can't.
Like, really?
I can't.
Like, yeah, I mean, that was their defense, that they watch the videos before they go up.
I actually feel hopeful about AI for this exact reason, because I'm like, I don't think a robot could be as malicious as a human. Like, we just need to have robots that are looking at these videos being like, yep, that person's not conscious. That person is not over 18.
But see, the problem is that I've talked to AI experts exactly about this problem. And like AI can do a lot. They can recognize very young children, but AI can't do what adults can't do, like humans can't do.
Yeah.
So you can't, like, even a pediatrician can't tell the difference on a consistent basis between a 15, 16-year-old and an 18-year-old, right?
No,
one is illegal, one is legal. They can't tell the difference between rough sex and rape. Like, you just, and then also there's that consensually recorded content, but non-consensually uploaded. And so you can't tell, like a robot can't tell. The only way to solve this, and that's why it's like, one of the things that I'm passionate about is solving the problem.
Yeah.
Not just holding one company accountable, but like, how can we put an end to this across the internet? And that is requiring age and consent verification for every person and every video that's uploaded to one of these sites. And it's totally doable, like totally.
But like fingerprint, like I think we need like, I don't know. I was hearing about how in China now the surveillance cameras like on the streets can actually like by your eyes, they can like identify you and they know like your credit score. I don't know. It's like, it seems like Black Mirror shit to me. You see Black Mirror, you know, it's just like, it almost is like, is this too far? It's for something like that.
I mean, it's just like, okay. In the US, since 1988, we've had a law called USC 2257 for porn. And it's for the porn industry. And it was adopted when it's like brick and mortar porn studios. Now it's all user generated. But it's a law that says you have to have record keeping and you have to verify the ID of those in the videos because it's understood that without that, it's going to be a wash with illegal content.
Yeah.
The problem is it just didn't evolve in the digital age. Right. And so what we need is just like an evolution of the laws that we've already had.
Right.
And they're just like common sense. Like if you're going to upload porn, like user generated sex videos to the internet, like make sure that they're of age.
Yeah.
And that they're consensual. I don't think that's too much to ask.
No. Well,
right?
Even I was just reading the other day about the Piper something, a mom who was like a YouTuber and like she was overworking these like 6-year-old girls and, you know, child, you know, it wasn't a sexual case, but it was like, you know, there are laws that protect, you know, child endangerment and like overworking a child when you're on a production set. But now that everybody's making all their own content, it's like, we definitely just need to catch up with that.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, absolutely. And that is the primary way that like porn is being distributed today is it's free porn and it's on these tube sites and it's user generated. Like anybody can become a pornographer today.
Yeah.
We have to have some regulations, some safeguards because the consequences for not doing it are so severe. You know, for these victims, surveys are showing of image-based sexual abuse. So that's like the spectrum of all kinds of image-based sexual abuse from, you know, non-consensually uploaded content to child rape and trafficking. But surveys are showing that upwards of 50% of these victims have suicidal ideation. Yeah. Many of them attempt suicide.
I bet.
And so it really is like a life and death issue. It's of urgency for us to solve that problem. And so, I'm very passionate about prevention for this.
Is it just Pornhub or what are the other ones?
I mean, it's not, right? I mean, first of all, MindGeek, they renamed themselves ILO. So after all of this has gone down over the last, you know, since 2020 and the lawsuits and losing Visa, MasterCard, Discover, all of that, having to take down. I mean, Financial Times has called it the biggest takedown of content in internet history.
Wow.
What happened to
them.
That's
amazing.
But they, so they are owned by a parent company it used to be called MindGeek, but they renamed themselves ILO because they wanted to try to distance from their toxic image.
Yeah.
But they own like most of the world's most popular porn tube sites. So like RedTube, YouPorn, TubeBait, GayTube, you know, ExtremeTube. I could just go on and on. They own so many of those.
Okay.
But then they have their biggest competitors. So they have XVideos, XNXX, XHamster. They all operate the same way. Like
what?
They were all operating the same way. But the good news is, like, there's hope.
Yeah.
Because these other sites that have been watching what was happening to Pornhub are scared of it happening to them.
Yeah, as they should be.
So they're taking proactive measures now to take down illegal content, to ban certain terms on the sites, to require verification, things like that.
Okay.
So that's
really
that's
hopeful.
a hopeful part of it.
Yeah,
right?
That's amazing. Okay, I do have to ask you because this is one of the hot topics on my podcast last week or a couple weeks ago. What do you think about like the Diddy thing? Do you think there's like an underground Hollywood sex trafficking happening with children? And
I mean,
so
it
many
sounds
rumors.
very like conspiratorial, kind of like conspiracy theory. So I don't really.
You don't have any insider info?
First of all, I don't have insider info into that. And I don't really, buy that kind of narrative. But I can look at the facts. Like I can look at the complaints, like the legal complaints that have been filed, the criminal complaint by the Department of Justice. It's packed with facts. It's usually the DOJ doesn't go after something unless they're pretty confident that they've really got evidence. And So I think there's definitely something nefarious that's gone on. I think, we're going to see it play out, but it sounds pretty horrific. And I mean, the lawsuit that was filed on behalf of 100 victims or is going to be filed. So the attorney did a press conference.
Right.
100 victims, right?
25? Yeah, 120 or something.
120. And then I think 25 of them were underage up to, one of them was 9, he said. So, I mean, that sounds pretty horrific. And it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out.
I know. It's a part of me is like kind of like excited just that I feel like we're getting to a world where you can't get away with this shit anymore.
I hope so.
I hope so.
I hope so. I think that is the key to ending this, really.
Yeah.
I mean, exploitation is always going to happen. I don't like to be unrealistic and say, okay, we're going to end, sexual exploitation. But we're going to we can put a dent in it. We can make the risk higher for traffickers and abusers by holding them accountable and ending impunity. I think that is one of the most important things that can happen. And have you been watching the Giselle Pellicot case or the trial? So she was a woman in France and
yes, who was raped by her husband.
Her husband actually had drugged her and then invited men to rape her while he filmed, and she would be unconscious when it was happening. It was like over 50 men, and they found 20,000 images and videos on his device in a folder called abuse. And this was her husband. So this is a grandma. She's like, I think she's over 70 years old.
Yeah. I saw her picture.
And so anyway, she chose to make her trial public because she could have had a private trial. She chose to make it public. And her reasoning is this is such a powerful phrase. She said, shame must change sides.
Yeah.
Shame must change sides because she wants to help empower victims to stand up to their abusers and to take them on in that very traumatic process.
Yeah.
Because that is, at the end of the day, how we're going to make a dent is ending impunity and holding those abusers accountable.
Yeah, I love that. Shame must change sides. Because it's so true. It's like, why should the victim be the one who's ashamed?
Exactly.
Like, what do they have to be ashamed about? But it is so true that, it's hard for people to look at this type of abuse. And I think even when it's when you feel bad for someone and you're still kind of objectifying them in a way when you're looking at them as a victim and not as a person.
One of the things that I know, not all survivors feel like this, but in some cases they like to be called a survivor versus a victim.
Yeah.
Some don't feel like they've gotten there and they, prefer actually to be titled a victim because of what happened to them. But yeah, there's I think it's beautiful what Giselle is doing in that she's trying to pave a way because it is hard to take on an abuser, when these victims have to go to court and they're interrogated by defense attorneys and they're, gaslighted and shamed and questioned. And it's a hard process, but it's a necessary process to be able to make the risk really higher than the benefit that they get.
Right.
By doing this.
Yeah, that's so true. I guess that is what she's going to have to talk to so many people who are actually trying to manipulate her her belief in the story, right? And just having to stay true to what the story to be. I think that's probably just so hard for so many victims who, if they had any kind of consent to it, she was obviously unconscious and.
Yeah, but so the call to action for the petition that I started. So I felt like it was super important to, have accountability in order to bring healing and closure to victims and to create a deterrent for future abusers. And so the call to action when I started what I called the Traffickinghub movement to hold Pornhub accountable, it was shut down Pornhub and hold its executives accountable for aiding trafficking, and started a petition. Today we have 2.3 million signatures from every single country in the world.
Wow.
Thousands of media articles have been written. Victims have come forward, are pursuing justice. And I think to some people, it seems like, wow, that is an extreme call to action. But to this idea of ending impunity, I think it's so important. Serious abuses call for serious consequences.
Yeah.
And if we don't have serious consequences, it's just like a slap on the wrist. It's a slap on the face to the victims who went through this, But then it just lets them go on their merry way, business as usual. And it's the cost of doing business. And we just can't let that be the case.
And then I think probably what they would defend themselves with is like, oh, you're just this like puritanical woman who just doesn't like porn and like.
Well, they did try that.
Yeah.
I mean, that was like one of their big defenses was like, don't listen to anything she says. She just hates sex. This is like an extremist thing to like end sex on the internet. I'm like, no, actually, porn stars have been some of the greatest allies in this.
Yeah, I'm sure.
They were helping because they were searching the tube sites for hours a day trying to find their stolen and illegal content on Pornhub and the tube sites.
Yeah.
And when they were doing that, they were coming across illegal content and sending it to me. And they were speaking out publicly. They were signing the petition. So they tried that. It didn't really hold because we've had people who are part of what's called the Traffickinghub movement. Atheists, Christians, right, left, you name it, people who are pro-porn, anti-porn. And we can all agree nobody should be raped for profit at all. Like nobody should be raped. Nobody should be raped for profit. Nobody should be raped for profit on the world's largest porn site.
Yes, I think we can all get behind that. Can we not?
Yes. So,
I think we could definitely all get behind that. So this petition that you have that sounds like it's still building. Where can people find it and what do you hope to do with it?
Yeah, traffickinghubpetition.com. People are still signing it every day. We're almost at 2.5. So I'd set a goal of 2.5 million signatures. And even if we don't fully get there, we're going to deliver. I'm hoping in 2025, we're going to be able to print this out. We're going to take it to U.S. Congress, demand legislation to prevent this from happening in the future. Demand proper criminal prosecution for what has happened. Same in Canada, same in the UK. And the power of the petition has been amazing. Like I can directly connect that petition to inspiring hundreds, if not thousands of media articles around the world to highlight what has actually been happening on Pornhub. And it's because of the petition, the viral nature of that petition over the past years, that victims have actually been able to come forward.
Yeah.
And who are now pursuing justice in court. So,
that's so amazing.
Yeah, it has impact. Like just that little thing of like sign a petition, share a post, all those little things make a huge difference.
Yeah.
Do you think that you're different than the average person? Like what gives you the grit to be able to look at these horrific things that I think a lot of people would shy away from, because especially as a mother, like it's hard for me to even like hear a story like that and it not just kind of like ruin my day.
Yeah, I'm a mom too. So I have a 4-year-old and 7-year-old.
4-year-old boy.
And 6-year-old.
Oh,
really? Okay.
Yeah.
4-year-old boy, 7-year-old girl. And it has really hit hard. Like I'm very vulnerable in the book about the personal toll and struggle that I've gone through in this fight.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really hold back in being vulnerable about that. It's told in first person, present tense. You go on that journey with me as a mother, right? As a sister, as a woman, as an advocate. But I think that something that's really helped me in being able to hear about these horrific stories, see these crime scenes, like actually witness them, has been the fact that we're seeing progress. Like it's pain with a purpose.
Right.
And we're actually seeing, being able to say, I was a witness to this crime scene and we have to hold the abusers accountable. We have to justify the victims. That has been really kind of an empowering thing to see happen over the years.
Right.
And just to know that like when I have to witness this, I can press pause. The victims can't. Like they call it the immortalization of their trauma. Like once a video is uploaded online, it lives forever.
Oh.
And so they say like the worst moment of my life has been immortalized and will live on for profit and pleasure long after I'm gone. And it's that thought that like torments them to the point of some of them just say it's like better not to live.
Yeah.
But knowing that like I could press pause, they can't. And so I think that's helped me and just being able to be a witness to this. But it's been hard. It's like, I'm not going to lie. It's like, it's been really hard.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even just thinking about it, like obviously we want to think about the victims and everything they've gone through, but almost focusing on all the people that you're saving, in the future who otherwise wouldn't have been protected.
I think of my own kids, that really motivates. Like I was on this journey already before I was a mom.
Mm-hmm.
Becoming a mom, I think has taken it to a whole new level.
Oh my God, yeah. The hormones alone about just that we're wired just to be so much more protective, not only of our own children, but
yeah. And some of the victims that I've, interacted with and that have come forward, I look at their stories, and I am like, this could be my daughter when she's 14.
Right.
Some of them, like her name's Serena from Bakersfield, California. She was a straight A student. She never kissed a boy before. She was 14 and she had a crush on a boy older than her. And he convinced her to send a nude image and video of herself to him. And she did, like so many other teens and tweens today. Like, it's totally normal.
Right.
He shared it with his friends. It got uploaded to Pornhub, millions of views. When she would beg to get it taken down, if it would get taken down, go right back up again and again. She ended up dropping out of school because she was being bullied. She ended up getting addicted to drugs because she wanted to numb the pain.
Right.
She tried to kill herself multiple times and then ended up homeless, living out of a car. But today she's suing them. She's not only suing them, she's also suing Visa for processing the transactions on her abuse videos and the hedge funds that actually funded Pornhub. So she's actually suing the literal hell out of Pornhub right now. So good for her.
How she backed up to be able to stand her ground in court?
She has some of the best attorneys in the country. And that's part of the story actually told in the book is Serena's story, how she came forward. And I was able to connect her with amazing attorneys that are representing her and supporting her.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for all the work you're doing. I'm like going to cry. It's really amazing. And for my listeners who want to help you in your journey, how can they find you?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I think that is like the most helpful is I put 3.5 years, poured my heart out into the book Takedown, and every red cent, like 100% of proceeds from the book go to the Justice Defense Fund.
Wow. Okay.
And it is the thing that I believe will not only educate people in their mind, but in their heart, because they're actually going to meet the victims and they're going to understand it as deeply as I do. And my hope is after they read the book that they will be as passionate about this as I am.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, I already am, and I've just been talking to you.
So that's the first thing, and that's takedownbook.com.
Okay, takedownbook.com.
And there you can also sign the petition. So there's a link to the petition. And you can join Team Takedown. So I'm creating Team Takedown. We're not only going to take down Pornhub, but we're going to take down illegal content across the internet and make the internet a safer place for generations to come. And so you can join Team Takedown there.
Okay, I'm definitely joining. And I'll add all of this to my Instagram as well. Amazing. And then can we find you on social media?
Yeah, at Laila Mickelwait. I'm tweeting about this nonstop all the time.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure. Amazing. Well, thank you so much. And it's so
Thanks
nice to
for
speak
having
to you.
me.